And now we're joined from Moscow by Asia One correspondent Dasha Chernyshova. Thank you so much, Dasha, for joining us here on Asia One once again. Well, Dasha, what is the Kremlin saying about the last night's missile and drone strikes on Kiev?
Well, the statement that has been released by the Russian Ministry of Defense says that was the massive strike against the military-industrial complex of Ukraine in response to what Moscow describes as Ukraine terrorist activities. And they say that they were targeting the whole list of enterprises involved into the Ukrainian military-industrial complex, which were producing components for the drones, for the ballistic missiles, as well as involved into the radio electronics and the construction of small machines that were used by the Ukrainian military during their drone attacks against the Russian civilian objects. And those are the attacks by Russia that are expected to be diminishing the Ukrainian military-industrial complex and their capacity to target strikes, to target facilities on the Russian territory, and to conduct those strikes against Russia's oil refineries that have been significantly disrupted and damaged over the course of these past weeks.
Talking about oil refinery, what has been Moscow's response to Ukraine's drone strike on the St. Petersburg's oil terminal?
Well, actually, we've seen several oil terminals and refineries being hit by the Ukrainian military just these past 24 hours. Moscow says that indeed in St. Petersburg, 2 facilities have been damaged. In Yaroslavl region, an oil refinery has also come under the Ukrainian attack. And most notably, a very long-range Ukrainian strike has reached an Omsk oil refinery. This is the oil refinery located deep in Siberia. That attack makes the longest and the deepest attack by the Ukrainian military against the target inside Russia. And given the volume of that oil refinery, that its capacity, how much it was producing, we understand that the shortages that are already very much visible on the streets of the different Russian regions, they are expected to worsen because of that hit. And for the first time, actually, since the start of the operation in Ukraine, we've heard about the drone attack and the missile danger being announced in Russia's Novosibirsk region. Again, these are the regions that are very far from the border with Ukraine. And obviously, Russia is now saying that task number 1 is to diminish Ukrainian capacity to strike these targets, but task number 2 is to increase the air defense systems.
Dasha, I think it would be interesting to know if there's any sign the Kremlin is willing to engage in peace talks ahead of the NATO summit. What's the update here?
Well, interestingly, we are hearing very conflicting rhetorics coming from the Kremlin and from the Russian Foreign Ministry. The Kremlin says that there is the sense that both Trump and Putin, the presidents of Russia and the United States, are moving in the same direction. They are interested in hearing the positions of one another, and the American administration under Trump is interested to hear what Russia is saying to understand the situation on the ground. And with that, I'd like to remind you that the 2 leaders had a phone conversation just this past weekend in which Putin was telling Trump about the situation on the ground and the seizure of Konstantinovka, a major logistics hub, by the Russian armed forces, something that Ukraine has been denying, and that obviously changes the situation on the ground even more in Russia's favor. But also we are hearing from the Russian Foreign Ministry statement suggesting that it does seem that at this stage that the US is not that interested to end this conflict, that they could have done that much faster should they have a genuine appetite to do that. So obviously Russia maintains it is open for the negotiations and for talks with Ukraine, but on Russia's terms and given the situation on the ground.
Okay, Dasha, thank you so much for joining us here on Asia One, and thanks for the updates.